Now we are going to have the panel discussion, right? With our main conference topic, basically AI friends of foo, and we have a bunch of prepared topics to discuss. But you are more than welcome to ask your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get them answered. The same as you asked a bunch of good questions during the Alan keynote talk. So please, guys, feel free to chat your questions. I guess at the end we're gonna have about maybe like 10 minutes or so to also to discuss some of the questions in the chat. So please do not hesitate to ask. I mean, there will be a bunch of experts on the panel discussion. So I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, and I'll try to kind of address your questions. So now I want to invite our panelists. Evgeny Borisov, developer relationship lead at EPAM. Mary Grygleski, the Java champion, senior developer advocate at Devoxx. Andriy Mulyar, co-founder and CTO at Nomic AI. And Sean Phillips, AI ML researcher at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. And I think you already saw at least or met at least like three our panelists. The Sean will go after these panel discussions. So Sean's talk will be the kind of last one in our schedule. But yeah, I mean, please welcome our great experts here.
Thank you.
Cool. Can you hear me well, guys? The Mary, Sean, Andriy.
Yes. Yes.
Good, clear.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And Zhenya, are you here with us or not yet? Let me check. Maybe Zhenya is still on. Okay, so Zhenya stuck on his on finishing his talk. But we can probably start without Zhenya for now, and Zhenya will kind of join later, right? So guys, I mean, I wanted to make this interactive, so I hope that it will be some questions in the chat. So I'll try to read them from the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that. But we can start with some of my prepared questions, or I would say topics, because I try to group them in some big areas, and we can probably try to discuss the topic and then maybe go deeper with some additional questions or more detailed questions. Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yep. Yep. Good.
Cool. Okay, so I guess let's start with the. I guess I'll try. I try to prepare some of the most kind of debatable questions, or most popular that people usually ask. They are not necessarily too technical, but this is, I mean, something I guess the most of the people interested in. But we can, of course, in our answers, you can go probably slightly deeper in technical details. But so the first topic I want to touch is does current advancements of AI actually treat software development employments in kind of future, or in the nearest future, and will AI eventually substitute developers, right? So what do you think, guys, or what recommendations can you?
I can start if nobody else wants to start.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I think absolutely not on the replacement side of things. I think it'll be more like a third arm. At least at our organization, most of our developers, you look at them, they have an IDE open and they have Chat GPT in the other window, especially a lot of the junior developers. There's a lot of kind of advances when it comes to the ability of code models to actually act as an assistant in the process of coding for developers. So I think that development will become a process that is more creative and less like having to memorize documentation or having to constantly be able to do lookups and like Stack Overflow to be able to like advance like the project that you're working on. It'll be a lot more like of the more interesting work that people want to be able to do. But I think it'll be very hard to like. There's a lot of people attempting to make agents right now that can do things like automatically like write software for you or like review PRs for you. But I think we're really far away from that right now.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay,
I guess
makes sense. Anyone else? Yeah, Mary, go.
yeah, sorry. And I also kind of get excited when talking about this. And Andriy, I totally agree with Andriy. It's not going to take jobs away. And in fact, I think we may need new jobs, I think new type of roles to take care of things. And there's an area that I talk about a bit too at my talk about hallucinations. We know that it is not perfect right now. I mean, it's how can you? There's no fact check, right? There are things that say Chat GPT, all of these things. So there's still like this one whole area that we have overlooked. We're too kind of excited or overconfident, so to speak, and excited by this new thing, thinking, okay, it will do our job. But look at it, right? I think maybe if you look back early days of computer too, they were worrying in the industrial revolution, oh, it's going to replace people, there would be no jobs. But look at, we have new types of jobs that they never had. So I think it's just a kind of normal thing, innovations, and then it introduce new things, but there will also be new needs that needs to be fulfilled, and that will be new kind of jobs too that we'll find out. And so, yeah, not to mention, I feel that there will be a lot more like quality control over jobs that are, that are being done by AI. So, yeah, so I don't think it will, take our jobs away. No, no way. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I agree, Mary.
yeah.
Sean, do you want to add something?
I do. AI models, especially generative AI, are trained on content on, let's say, requirements. And so are programmers, right? Developers were trained on how to read requirements and translate that into code. The problem isn't the translation. The problem is the generation of the requirements. If designers and management and owners and the captains of industry are so terrible as they are at making these requirements meet what they really need, then what hope does AI have to to learn how to fix that? That's a human problem. That's not an AI problem. So no, AI can't replace developers for the very reason why these big significant software engineering projects struggle. It's the same reasons. It's just, well, they just have different methods. What will happen, and what is already happening, are you get into these in between spaces of need for generating content in the code spaces. When I say generating content, I'm talking about the lines of source code, blocks, sizable chunks of blocks of code. This kind of talks to, I think Andriy said earlier, it'll be a convenience. It'll be like, I like the third arm metaphor. It's going to extend developers, and then the question is, who's going to dictate who uses AI and when, and for the sake of code generation. And I think there's a lot of gains to be had in these spaces where we would love to be able to auto generate small sizable chunks of code that with flexibility beyond just brute force lookups. And that's where the generative AI tools are already starting to manifest themselves. I also see a benefit in legacy software. I say legacy. I don't like that word because it implies that there's something wrong with software tools that have already been developed. Very, very functional tools that require a lot of inputs ahead of time. Sometimes those tools don't get used because the upfront labor that the human is required to provide is painful, right? And that can be scripting, that can be configuration, etc. Generative AI, for example, we're using that to auto-generate these sort of input formats, these input configurations, these input scripts as the sort of inputs to these bigger, more complex tools. What that's done is reduce the total labor necessary to continue to use these tools for these more complex problems that we see every day. But the catch is, it's what Mary was saying, it's not 100%. You still have to have the people there. But now instead of saying, oh God, I got to spend all this time just typing or clicking or whatever, now it's, I have to spend a fraction of that time reviewing what's happening. And now what you're going to see is a renaissance of older tools and older ideas that are now suddenly having new life breathed into them because the generative AI tools are helping to fill in the gaps.
Yep. Yeah. To add into what Sean was saying.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I was going to add also from my side. I mean, there was a talk, I guess, from Hugh today, and I put down the one of his phrases that I really liked. So he actually said on this topic, he said that AI do not replace us, but people using AI will, right? Because I mean, so I guess this kind of advancements or AI revolution, it's like it push developers to kind of of course learn new stuff, new kind of approaches, new technologies, and to use basically to get more productivity and efficiency, right?
Yep. Yeah. The one thing I want to add here is that a lot of times when people hear sort of like AI powered development, they think of like code models that will help like auto generate or auto complete your code, and they usually think of like GitHub Copilot or these products from Microsoft. There's a lot of startups right now that are building kind of a new UX around how code models interact with your editors, specifically like your VS Code IDEs. There's one company out there called Rift that's doing some really interesting stuff with like local code models as released by like Replit or Facebook's Llama Coder, where they have just like a very, very fascinating sort of like new user experience to interact with your IDE that makes like generative AI like a first-class citizen as you code. All the models run locally as well. So like if you're in the audience and you're interested in that stuff, there's a lot of really interesting resources happening in that space that you don't really see if you're just looking at like the Microsoft advertising.
Yeah, cool. I mean, thanks for mentioning that, Andrew. And by the way, I mean, Evgeny joined us while we've been like talking. So, Zhenya, welcome. First of all, welcome. And so basically, the first question was that we've been discussing, but you probably already understood from the context is that's one of the questions that people usually ask is does kind of current AI advancement basically going to substitute developers or somehow treat software development like employment, right? And I guess everyone like provided quite a good kind of
in the short period of time, I totally agreed with what you said, with the guy you quoted, that it will not replace us, but the people who will use it replace us. Or we should start to be different. But in the long future, who knows? It depends to what we'll call the developer as a profession. Maybe it will be something different at all. Maybe it will be only prompt engineering.
Yeah. No, I mean, as Mary also said, I mean, there will be like more roles, more like new roles that people will take actually, and actually, I mean, I would say the work also generate the new work, as also Andrew said. I mean, with kind of appearance of this so many now developers implementing the more tools on top of that and kind of to make them more convenient to use by the others and so on, so it's like a cycle. I mean, yeah, cool.
But I want to say the direction that I'm working now, it's not about how to replace the developers. It's about how to make developers more efficient and seriously more efficient. One of the things I thinking now for the last days or weeks, that what do you think, guys, about the history of the ChatGPT of the developer? Is it value? Does it have any value for us? The history of the chat. If we compare the history of the Google, and history of ChatGPT, is there any difference from the point of view?
When you say history, do you mean by like chat history, or do you mean like the historical development of the technology?
No. My chat history.
Can you provide an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Can you please provide an example of what you mean?
Yeah.
An example, you developing some microservice, and for example, you one of the people who loves to use help of ChatGPT. So I'm not saying about that you develop any class with ChatGPT, but complicated, interesting classes you do with him. So first of all, how do we work? We have two strategies. Strategy number, even 2 and 3 strategy. Strategy number 1, we ask the question, we receive an answer, we analyze the answer, we try to use it, we see it doesn't compile or any other reason it doesn't work, and then we thinking about how to ask another question, then we ask another question, then we get better answer, and in cycles we work like this. This is approach number 1, and in this approach, it's the value of the history of this chat will not be so high. Why? Because most of the information in this history is just the answers you didn't like, and you can find yourself that you sitting 1 hour on fixing the prompt and asking again, fixing the prompt, asking again, and the length of the history is too big to find something usable you received half an hour ago to go back. You understand that the branch you decided is the wrong, and there is no road anymore. You need to go back to step number 13 from step number 45, and you don't remember where the step was. This is problem number 1, and we can see that the history of the chat is not valuable. A little bit later, I explained how to change the things. Thing number 2, think about that you have a task to write some object factory, and you did that, you completed your task, you committed a task, and it is in production for several months. And you switch to another project, and then you come back to this project, and one day somebody comes to you and say, remember the object factory you developed 1 year ago? We need to continue working on that. We found some bug, or we found some performance problem, or we found some solution how we can improve performance problem. We changed something in our infrastructure, and maybe because of that we need to do some changes. And what you can do, you don't even remember, you hardly remember the name of the class, but you don't remember how you developed that and why it is like that. Now think about that you have with a very good quality history of the chat with all information how this class was developed, what was in the beginning, what you thought, what you changed it, and without wrong answers, only the good qualified answers. Can it help you? More than that, you already have a prompt with the needed context to continue developing on that. You don't need again to formalize a lot of things which already exist in this chat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it
Okay.
really depends on what you're. Yeah, Evgeny, I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. Like, there are certain cases where you want a fresh context when you're interacting with your LLM because you don't want it to, for instance, like you get in these loops sometimes if you're interacting with ChatGPT, for example, or any LLM, where it goes in and it responds to you, says, I can't do an answer because of its bias filtering. And then it'll keep doing that repetitively for subsequent prompts, even though it actually can if you were to do a fresh, like context reset. So I think it highly depends on just like what your actual use case is. Yes, like adding an additional context into the context window that is factual will probably increase the factuality of your responses, but maybe that's not something you actually care about. I think the question is like really too open-ended.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build some methodology for the developers on the daily basis for the regular tasks. And you know what? I thought what should be the most important thing for everybody? It's single responsibility. Like we love the single responsibility in the code, we need to try to work. It's one of the approaches. I'm not saying that it's always good. I'm saying it's good for daily tasks when you need to develop some service, okay, which maybe uses some additional services, but they do not exist. You need to develop them later with this task. So for such kind of tasks, this approach can be good. And my approach says single responsibility in the prompt as well. I have prompt per class, and I have convention. Every time I'm finishing my chat, I have 2 options. Option number 1, I delete that. Option number 2, I rename it to the name of the class, including the name of the project. It will be name of the project dot name of the class, in order that I will be able to find it easily. Now, when I'm developing new class, I'm always starting with that if this class connected to the previous one, I'm taking the last version of the previous one, throw it to the new, totally new chat window, and say, look at this class, and now I want to develop another one which will, and this how the communication should be. I see that ChatGPT is, I'm an engineer, I'm an architect of the code, and he is the technical guy for me. So I want him to work by single responsibility to develop pieces for me, and my responsibility is to combine them together. But in order to simplify even that part of work, I always explained for each part what it should be integrated with other details, how, and what are the other details. Usually it's not too many. You don't need to copy paste to the new chat window thousands of the classes to explain what should be the communication, because if you work by single responsibility, you don't have too many communications. So this is one of the approaches we can try to implement, and in this approach, the value of the history will be very expensive, because it will save a lot of time during the development and later for the maintenance.
But by the way, guys, is it not something? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you might know better. But is it not something that, like, Copilot tools, or basically tools that integrate with your IDE, is trying to achieve, is to keep some context and history of what you're actually doing, and across your classes or across your, like, application, and then provide you some suggestions based on what you already, like, did, or what it's already, like, scanned from your code base. Because I saw something like that with the Copilot, or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so there's two main modes that I see, at least in our company, people interacting with generative AI systems when it comes to like programming. One mode is the mode that Evgeny was describing, where they have code blocks. Code blocks, obviously, there's not large amounts of context, but they have some piece of code that they're trying to, better debug, better understand, better have some sort of text manipulation engine, help them work through. They copy paste it into a chat client like ChatGPT or whatever else is out there, and then they interact with it in some manner. And that helps them. It's kind of like a rubber duck in some senses. So that's fine. And then what you were describing, basically like code plugins into like generative model plugins into like VS Code or some sort of code editor that do like next item, the next sort of like token prediction across like the tokens in your programming languages vocabulary, generating comments for you and this sort of thing. And like both of those are just like two different user experiences into using generative AI with coding. And I think they both have their benefits. They both have their downsides. People prefer one or the other. But what I was saying earlier is that there's whole sort of companies building like an integrated experience where like you don't have to go have a chat OpenAI chat window open. You don't have to have your specialized plugin just that does like next token prediction in your IDE. It's an integrated system all into your IDE where it automatically will pick up that context that you want from your other files and this sort of thing. So like we're really at the early stages of just like how developers are learning to use this technology, and there's going to be a lot of user experience improvements like in the coming months even that are going to like really help clarify I think a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's an additional aspect to this code generation type problem, which doesn't affect as many people probably that are listening as like how it affects myself and my organization. But I think it's worth mentioning here because it's highly relevant. My organization is a nonprofit research org, and we are dedicated to supporting the U.S. government. That's just who we are. Okay. But as a result, a lot of the work that we do has a sensitive nature. A lot of defense work, a lot of highly classified work. Not all of it, but a lot of it, most of it. It's a non-starter to use a commercial large language model to request information or request code generation for many of these projects, because the request has to go out to uncleared, unsecure commercial services. It's not even an option. We're not allowed to. And so we have developed internal systems that house many of these high-powered large language models internally already to circumvent that. But that's not cheap, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of hardware. So people have to be aware that when they say, "Oh, well, I'll just use this plugin and then go in, and it'll auto-generate this block or that block," okay, but what are the ramifications from a security standpoint and a sensitivity standpoint? And the newest buzzword, which I can't stand, but it's what everybody keeps saying, a responsible AI, which just means kind of like encapsulates that aspect, but other things too, like bias and leakage. Like, how are you responsible using these things? And in some cases, the matter is a matter of sensitivity and security. So keep those things in mind over the next few years. It'll be interesting to see what the big commercial services end up doing in order to play ball, so to speak.
Yeah, no, this is quite interesting topic you touched, Sean. Is there any other yes, I mean, I had the kind of general topic to discuss some of the well-known concerns, as you touched, the security and responsible usage of this kind of tools, but there are also aspects of I mean, privacy, which is related, and ethics also, that I guess Mary touched during her talk, is whether you can make some harm to someone else by just generating some not basically not true statements about like people, or even generating some way, maybe photographs or something, or video with the people, I don't know.
Well, now
That's
you're talking
right.
my language, because that's been going on for years, and that's something that we've been fighting for years in the latest versions of ChatGPT and its ilk. Basically, make it even harder to deal with, and there are methods that show promise, but it's not a solved problem. Large language models are being used for precision targeting, propaganda, and social influence at a massive scale. It's already been done. It's been happening. It's already happened to you, and you don't even realize it. Most people I talk to say, "Oh, I can tell the difference." Sometimes, but it's not all the time, and it's not you. It's you and you and you and you and you and you and you. It's everybody around you, and en masse will become collectively dumb because of it. So what are we doing about it? This is an aspect of the responsible use of AI, but it's really a technical problem. What we've done with AI, see, we say AI, friend or foe. AI isn't friend nor foe. AI is like a gun. Just sitting on a table, it's not interesting. When it gets interesting is when somebody picks it up and points it at someone. So who's got the AI and who are they pointing it at? That's when it gets interesting, and that's when it can be friend or foe and scary or beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start talking about that more in like public discourse. But right now, most people who aren't in it, all they think about is a sensationalized Hollywood version of it. Like, some robots, Mary said it, we're not talking robots coming to kill us all, Terminator style here. It's really, how is this going to be used by people with power to take advantage of people without power? And the problem is, it's a very non-linear center of mass. It's a very very non-linear critical mass, meaning once you've acquired this capability and then start employing it against other people, it's almost impossible to catch up if you aren't starting there. And so over time, and I'll just want to conclude with this, over time, long term, it'll be the cost to acquire and utilize these things will become very low. But is it by then too late from a social damage standpoint?
Yeah, Sean makes an amazing point. I think the defense angle is an ultra important one, because as you said, these systems have been used in production settings way before even 2018 when you had this transformer architecture that came out that allowed you to make these models. There were machine learning models that could generate text before 2018. They were running around on Twitter, filling our bandwidth channels with auto-generated content, hyper-targeted to make people think and feel in different ways. What's really interesting, so like I might be one of these parties, Sean, that you're talking about here from the making it easy standpoint. So like what we do at Nomic is we make large language models able to run on like 4 gigabytes of RAM and low amounts of CPU, and we basically build a platform that makes it easy for anyone to go in and use the technology. We're like we have one of the sort of most popular GitHub repositories to make this happen, and we get a lot of criticism for it. The criticism mainly comes from the fact that like, hey, like think about the harm that you're doing to the world by making it dumb easy for like an 11-year-old to go and access a chatbot that can fill the internet with generated content. And
I would argue most people chatting on the internet are 11-year-olds at this point, but mentally, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think you're really doing that much damage, you know? It's like a rocket, you know? You can take it. What you're doing is making cheap rockets, right? You're making it so you can get to the moon cheap, but you could also launch a nuclear missile on it. You know, it's not your fault.
I have a greater point.
Try again.
Yeah, but I have a greater point here. The greater point is how we respond to this, because I think there's actually a bigger risk to it. The bigger risk is the fact that right now most people, when they interact with this technology, can only do it through the APIs of about like 2 or 3 major legit companies, and those companies and the suburbs of Silicon Valley, which drive the sort of biases and ethical standards that those companies make their models by, are the ones who get to control what people can and cannot do with this technology. And that's usually our response to this exact same thing. Right now, if you want to create one of these bots, like you can go in and use OpenAI's API to do this sort of like mass scale propaganda. They won't be able to catch you in every possible way you can do it. But they are the ones who get to say who can and can't have access to it, and who can and can't build the defenses for the system. Who's to say the next generation of models that's produced internally OpenAI won't be, set off to do things that are maybe considered bad for the rest of the world, but good for that subgroup of people. So that's sort of our angle on it, at least.
Very true.
Yeah,
that's an excellent argument.
Which LLM, by the way, you think is the most efficient for you? If I may ask, ChatGPT, Cloud, Google, Facebook.
So I only use local LLMs. I run them all on my computer. I turn off the internet and they run. I don't know. The best in class is all. The best in class is GPT-4. If you want a general purpose LLM to be able to do whatever you want, it's GPT-4. There's second place is by a margin. But that's if you want a general purpose model. If you want a model that's specialized to a specific task that you want to use, or like at your enterprise that you care about doing, like chatting with your customers on a specific narrow set of issues, summarizing text, doing some sort of text classification task, you can get the performance of GPT-4 on these narrow tasks with open source models out of the box or with very little manipulation. So Llama out of Facebook, you have MPT by Mosaic, now acquired by Databricks. You have Falcon out of the UE. All these models are hyper capable of doing things. It's just like the level of accessibility for them is a lot lower because the stack to get them running is very complicated. The easiest way to do it is to go at chat.openai.com and get going, right? That's the way your grandmother can do it. But the software environment around it will increase and get easier. So like, what's the best LLM? I mean, it depends what your profile of risk and profile of like technological promises.
I have another question, by the way, guys. That another topic. Let's say I wanted to dig in a bit, right? And this is going slightly to our discussion about like basically developers and stuff, and something that Evgeny also kind of mentioned that in our company, let's say, right, we are some research, and I'm pretty sure that there are the other companies doing the similar like research, how the LLMs can actually like help developers, or help I would say even kind of improve SDLC process, right, on some of the stages, maybe to improve kind of our productivity in writing the code, or maybe improve productivity in kind of testing the code, or maybe generating documentation, or maybe helping us to debug the code, or fix the bugs. So there are obviously, different stages in SDLC where we can benefit from this, recent advancement of this kind of tools. So what do you think, from your experience, or maybe from how you see the future, kind of? So where LLMs will be the most efficient, and where they may be not so kind of useful at all? Maybe there are some areas where they're not useful at all.
I have an opinion on this. I think
Yeah,
most of the things people use LLMs for are a waste of your credit card token costs on these services. I come across companies all the time who are literally spending $4,000, $5,000 a month on LLMs to do text classification tasks. It is just the reality. People are overusing this technology for things that they can't be, because it's like a Swiss Army knife that works kind of well for about everything, but there's most specialized approaches that you can use that have a much better cost profile than what you can by calling these like LLM APIs. Just to give an example, right? Like if you're doing a text classification task, yes, you can go in and prompt your model, and then feel how get a sense for how your model feels on like a couple of examples to be like shipped to production. That's not a good way to evaluate that machine learning system. That's not responsible AI, but people do it because it's easy, because software engineers usually don't have machine learning backgrounds to be able to properly evaluate machine learning models. But you can go in and so instead of paying $4,000 a month for your tax classification system, pay $10 a month to deploy that, just by going in and training an actual like classification model in like a standard like machine learning paradigm. It's going to get the same performance. I think people are overusing the technology for things that they don't need to be. At least this is what I'm seeing when I talk to our customers.
I see. Quick comment here. I think it's because it's easy to use, Andrew. Right? I mean, and this is of course
Yep.
now it's hype and it's easy. It's super easy. That's why you're using it for everything. Sometimes like without additional thinking whether it can be actually done better, right? But I mean, I agree with you.
Oh, for sure,
But
for sure.
anyone else, the thoughts about the applications in SDLC?
I'm seeing some. What do I see at where I work? Well, I'm the code generation thing as a convenience thing is just not there yet. For the limited applications that I've seen but where I have seen some almost not only rapid but natural gains in productivity are utilizing, in this case, again, we use ChatGPT, but utilizing it to generate creative exchange. Now, okay, just saying that by itself is like, well, no, duh, that's what it's for, right? But the specifics matter. For example, I support this really great project where they're doing tabletop type exercises, like for lunar defense scenarios, and this is to try to figure out policy of like how things are going to go, that sort of thing. And in the past, tabletop exercises were basically glorified role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, but for like emergency response or something like that. Very costly, very time-consuming, very slow process. And what they've done is they've hooked up ChatGPT and then had created some guided prompts which allow ChatGPT to respond to the player in a sort of like game master type fashion, but in not really limited, only a little bit limited. And that really allows the people playing these things to not only play through, but then we can keep these histories of content that are generated. And then we can compare them against each other and say, okay, these types of people, they tend to handle this situation this way or that way or that way. So that by itself is very useful. And it's a really cool application. And it really just fell into place naturally. And in the last few weeks, what I've come to realize, and in your question, the last couple minutes of discussion in your question has jogged my brain. I think there's a real good potential here for generating automatic testing. And I don't mean testing like, oh, we're going to automatically generate some unit tests. That's a solved problem. And I would argue it's not really a good solution, because just generating tests for every single function doesn't tell you much. It just tells you whether or not your code's broken. Having creatively generated but partially guided, partially supervised workflows allow us to sort of test the interactions that would come from normally from hiring an army of testers. Now, I'm not saying that testers are going to be replaced like paralegal people are about to be replaced by ChatGPT, but like what I'm saying is you could now do more with less. And I don't care what the organization is. Nobody spends enough money testing software for enterprise systems. They spend what they can afford, and then that's pretty much it, right? I mean, maybe there's a few exceptions. You could point at NASA and say, well, they don't necessarily launch these things without testing everything. Like they do their best, right? But there's only so much they can do. Having tools like this you could see an explosion of workflow testing for services, tools, applications, even GUIs potentially. And so I'm kind of I'm eyeballing that as maybe one of the next industries that are going to pop up as a derivative industry from this explosion of capability from large language models.
It's interesting.
I just tried to ask him now in what industry he is useless. I didn't like his answer. He doesn't really understand.
Yeah.
It seems like he can do everything. Not today, but soon.
Do you know?
saying
I mean, this
that-
is like a side. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, he said that physical work is a problem for him. Meanwhile, but it's not. Post-con robotics do a lot in order that Terminator will come one day. And the psychologist, he said that he's not good in psychology, but and religion. This is the only answer I agree. In religion, I think he cannot do a lot of things. Actually, maybe in religion, maybe it will be a new religion. ChatGPT is our God, something like that. Politician, he say politician, but I think that politician, he can be perfect politician. He's honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, if you
With
ask
C.
something,
Yeah,
if you
but
ask
C.
if you ask something tough, it always says like kind of something like it depends. And I was, on the side note. I mean, I don't want to go into this direction, but when I first time I chatted with ChatGPT, I actually try to discuss the kind of the war, right? The current like Ukraine, like the war in Ukraine, and try to kind of understand or try to make him predict what will happen, or what's what's the scenarios. And there was like, I was like, losing my temper even with him, because he was like so politically like natural. So I was like pushing
It will
him like a
never
direct
happen. No
question.
war. I even cannot imagine. I did the same.
No, he was saying it all depends, like a classic politicians. It's kind of depends. You need to kind of sit, discuss. I said, no, look, this. So I mean, this was crazy. I mean, I decided that it's not the good topic to discuss with ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, this boils down to like the issue I think I hit on earlier. It's just like these models. I mean, ChatGPT is not an entity. It's a model trained based on the data that was fed into it by OpenAI, and the biases that they get to bake into it, which are like neutrality, like the kinds of things you're describing, are what the world gets to experience this technology with. The very same way there are large language models out there. They don't release them to the public that react very differently to these sorts of questions. And people should be able to control how that technology and how they use it and how they interact with it and what the technology does. That's one of the big problems we have right now, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, we have two questions in the chat, guys. I just wanted to kind of address them, but I think the first question is what actually Sean mentioned. I think the answer is so basically the question: are there any ways to prevent kind of wrong usage of AI, tools like propaganda hunting, or kind of stopping that, kind of propaganda, or stopping maybe this kind of deep fake we see kind of around us. And I think this is exactly the problem that Sean and and the other guys are, basically fighting with, right? So I think we
Yeah,
already like touched on that.
we should ban GPUs.
Well, there is an answer to that, but it's not a happy answer. The answer is no. You can't stop them from using it, no more than you can stop somebody from using a gun or using something else, anything else for a negative reason. What you can only do, just like in any other situation, is discourage the use by making it either unprofitable or ineffective or not cost advantage. What do I mean by that? If it costs them $100 to use a large language model, I'm just using round numbers, to do something bad, okay?
Yeah.
They're going to do that because $100 is nothing. If it cost them $1 trillion to do that, then they wouldn't do it. So one of the things that OpenAI has done is lowered the barrier to increase the capability and lowered the cost for that said capability, which is why it's a big deal. So you can't stop them from using it. So what we have to do now is focus on methods, techniques, other things, which make it so that for them to continue to use it effectively, it's going to cost them more. I don't mean going over to OpenAI or whomever and demanding that they charge more. What I mean is you need to come up with methods that make it harder and harder and more difficult for them to utilize this capability effectively. Meaning, and I'm going to touch upon this in my presentation after this, and it's just a very specific example, and it's by no means comprehensive. What we have to find ways to do is to find asymmetric cost advantages for showing that the bad guys that if they need to spend, instead of spending $100, it's now going to cost them $100,000 to do whatever they want to do. Now they're going to stop and think twice because there's probably some other thing that they'd rather spend their money on.
Can you give a concrete example?
That's the best you can do.
Can you give a concrete example of this? It doesn't have to be like AI related, just like out of curiosity. Like what would be one of these asymmetric things?
I'll actually show a concrete example in my talk right after this. But I think it's a concrete example given what you're asking. So an example would be we're going to use. Let's keep it simple. Large language model, generate text. That is what they do. Why and for what is really the question. And the for what is your goal? So if your goal is to use a large language model to generate text, a social media sized blurb of text, which targets some sort of propaganda effect. You want to go onto Reddit. You want to get a bunch of people riled up and have them storm a Capitol. That might have happened recently, right? Over some bullshit. Then, well, that's cheap now. It's cheap to just flood those things with bits of text. But what if you had a capability that was extremely cheap to run in an automated, practical manner that could be like fake, 90% fake, 89% fake. You can put these tools in the hands of people or even just bake them into websites, bake them into services. And then now that same text that got generated is getting flagged with an indicator saying, oh, this is probably fakes. And it immediately instills a set of distrust. So now the propaganda that's being generated, it might be true, but it's fake. It's been generated. And therefore people need to know. People deserve to know. And so that would be an example of okay. I think I made my point. That I think that's a concrete example in the sense that you're asking.
It's a concrete example, but it's an impossible thing to do, detecting AI generated text. You bring up a really good point. Just like you need to find.
Better watch my presentation then.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's not a matter.
I will hop on a call with you.
It's a matter
of this. I'll prove it.
It's a matter of probability. It's a matter of likelihood. I actually point out all the flaws in the method. It's by no means is it a solved problem. I was saying before, it's not possible to solve. No, I know, but but it's a good point. It's an important point. So like if it was possible, we probably would have already figured it out, because it's got to be. We need to make it not palatable. We have to make it so that the bad guys don't want to use this to do bad things, and the only thing that bad people recognize is money and power and control. Those types of things. You can't reason with these people. They don't listen. So if we make it so it's just not cost effective, then that's about as good as we can hope. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's a concrete example. Yeah. I think
it is. Yeah. Cool.
So I think we should join the next Sean's talk, right? So to continue that discussion. But, I wanted to address one more question in the chat, and also I had this kind of topic also like in my list, and I think this is what's the fellow also like developers usually asking is what's the so again with all these like tools around and stuff like that, right? So what developers should do like today, right, to not to be on the bench tomorrow, right? Or like in other words, what should like developers now kind of learn as the most probably kind of critical or the most beneficial things with regard to this AI tools and stuff to make them more let's say like valuable, right, going forward. So can you recommend some like resources or just the learning paths or or kind of how to not get lost, I would say. And not just stupidly use the ChatGPT for just random stuff, right? So,
I guess one concrete thing is like it's very clear that AI systems are going to be permeating every part of like consumer society. So like every human who is not maybe an engineer, is not maybe technical, maybe not even used a computer before and starts using computers, will start encountering these systems, and the systems will be deployed there. Maybe it's time to like start educating people on some like basic machine learning concepts. I know this sounds kind of far-fetched and like maybe this is a difficult thing to do, but like if ML is going to be everywhere, to like not just showing you ads, but like really integrated into your keyboards on your phones as you type. People need to have some inklings of how these systems work. I mean, they don't have to know the technical stuff, but they should have some idea of what the system they're interacting with. So like my one piece of advice to developers, just like go to one of those free MIT like intro to ML courses. You don't need to know much math, and just like get a sense for what these black boxes are that are filling our entire internet with generated content and helping you do your daily tasks. Like figure out what they are above just like they give me an output out.
You can ask ChatGPT what to do in this case.
Yeah, they'll make something up.
That's true.
You should read your stuff.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I guess I agree. I mean, basically, yeah.
Go on, Mary. Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying like repeating what Andrew was saying too, is that I think everybody should have some understanding. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to know how do you do something like technically, mechanically, whatever, but it's just the implications of it, right? What it means. Like before you use it, you have to understand what it can, what kind of problems that it can, I guess a lot of times too, it could be unintentional if you're doing something that can, have adverse effect unintentionally. So that's the kind of things we want to try to avoid, first of all.
Yeah, like the example you gave earlier, Mary, with like the robot thing, I think that like if we can get every person in the world knowing that the thing behind their text generation engine is not some robot sitting on the other end typing into a computer and like actually have some sort of mental image of what's happening, I think that would do a lot for the world.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, I can
do
you also like
every time when you receive correct answer?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
I'm saying that if you say thank you, great job every time when you receive something good from him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get I don't want to be
I'm not
attacked in 10
joking.
years when they look through the histories and the.
That's true.
Got to be nice to our AI overlords, huh?
Yeah, that's true.
I
Except
I
for
have
the
like
good atmosphere which you can create by saying, "Hey, thank you, what a beautiful code," but he really learns from that, and his answer is more and more predictable. And I want you to ask, if you use OpenAI, do you really trust them that do not take your information? Because sometimes I'm receiving the results from him, which is looks like code I wrote yesterday but never showed to him, but still he see it.
I don't trust them.
Okay.
Yeah, no. They have absolutely no incentive to not do that because it makes their system better and gives them a competitive advantage, no matter what their terms of service and data use
Yeah.
policies say. So,
I mean, just to kind of to wrap up probably here. I mean, just kind of coming back to my question actually about the what we can do. I think one simple example, at least, as you said, just to get some like basic knowledge of maybe AI and ML and what these tools can do or can't do. I mean, the another like simple example. I would definitely suggest everyone to look at some like simple. I mean, there are lots of nice videos on YouTube, just to kind of to see to get understanding of what means the good prompt for tools like ChatGPT, right? So how to properly write your prompt to get the good results out of that, because I guess this is the very very common mistake that people do. I mean, if you kind of ask bad questions, you're getting bad answers basically, right? So it's very important to kind of
What do you
to
mean by
use
bad
the
questions?
no, I mean not well formulated prompts, right? So
I'm not
it's
agreeing.
very
I'm
very
not
important.
agreeing.
I mean,
Sure
from
that if your prompt is better, you will get the better results. But sometimes you can get very good result if you ask two couple of words. For example, I
yeah,
realized
maybe.
that if I can give a good name for the class, a really good name for the class, sometimes it's enough. I'm saying right and the
Yeah,
name of the class. And if I will show the previous version of the class and then say, write this class with this name, it can be enough. Is
yeah.
it good
but
prompt or
but
not?
this is Yeah, but this is exactly what I mean, right? Because it depends what means the good prompt in some particular example. So sometimes the two words is better than a lot of context, which can confuse the ChatGPT. So that's what I mean. I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to put a lot of information, but you need to know what to emphasize and when it's like it gives
Exactly.
the better result. Yeah. um, okay, guys. So that was like a great conversation. So I don't want to take more time from the Sean, because Sean is going to be the next speaker in this stream. So thanks all for joining, and I mean, I'm happy to kind of to have you at this conference.
Thank
well,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Oleg.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Well, cheers.